So I have a question here about how to go about ending friendships. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones, I'm a licensed therapist. This commenter writes, "Hi, Dr. Natalie, I hope all is well. Thank you for your previous video. I wanted to ask you follow-up questions in regard to this topic. How do you go about wanting to end the friendship? Because you notice your values do not align with your friends, and or you notice that they are only your friend because of the benefits you bring, but they do not offer much. Should you tell them that you no longer want to be friends, or just distance yourself? So this is a good question, and everybody's style is going to be different. Everybody's everybody is going to have a bit of a different take. So I will say this. So number one, I think if the only reason you guys are friends is because you are overextending yourself and you're putting more work into the relationship than they are, then pretty much all you have to do is stop doing it. If you stop doing it, you might actually never hear from them, and therefore a conversation is not needed. So when you're friends with users or people that are very transactional, they're only going to show up if you benefit them. If you're not benefiting them, if you're not overextending yourself, if you're not the one planning, doing, buying, and stuff like that, you may actually never hear from them again. So there is that. So that's number one. Number two, and I'll just throw out some suggestions. You kind of pick out what works for you, or don't, so it's free will here. But number two, if 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 you have a person that's being blatantly disrespectful, and to me, when someone's not being a friend to you, especially when you observe them being a friend to other people, or just when you observe them being selfish in general, it's up to you whether or not you want to have that conversation. But I feel like when the for me, when the disrespect is blatant and over the top, or they've continued to do things over and over again, I don't have a conversation. Block and move on. That's just kind of me. Some people have various different opinions about that, but for me, I've seen everything I needed to see. What do we need to have a conversation about? If you've been blatantly disrespectful, we didn't need to have a conversation in order for you to be blatantly disrespectful. So therefore, we don't need to have a conversation if I need to exit stage left. It's just what it is. Again, people may feel differently about that. Number three, you can have a conversation about it. Um, if but you need to think for you, what is the point of me having a conversation? And you really need to think about that, because for everybody, that answer might be a little bit different. But if the answer is, okay, I want to have a conversation and call the behavior out and give that person an opportunity to change. Okay, if they suddenly miraculously change, how are you going to assess whether or not that change is genuine? If that change is, if they're going to continue that change, and does that undo all of the disrespect that they did previously? Just because they perk up and they say, okay, I'm going to get it right. But let's just say, for example, all these special occasions have gone by, your birthday, Christmas, and things like that, and they've never showed up for you, but you've always managed to get a gift for them, and you've always shown up for them, and you've been there for you. And every time it comes, been there for them, but every time it comes to you, they always have an excuse ready. They can't do it. They won't do it. They shan't do it. Whatever the case may be. Does that really, having that conversation, and they suddenly say, oh, I'm going to do better. I promise. I'm not going to do it no more. I'm going to be there. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Does that undo everything, all the disrespect that's happened, for you? And that's something that you would need to think about. And then the other thing, C, that you will need to think about is, what's your bottom line? What is your deal breaker? And you know what? You can If you want to end the relationship, you could say, hey, depending on how you feel, you can send a text message. Hey, I think we're kind of not aligned. We're moving in different directions. Or I'm noticing these things. My feelings were hurt because of X. You could send a text, you could do a phone call, you can meet up and do it. It depends on how much work you want to put into it, especially if you're the one doing all the work. So that's one thing. So if everybody that's going to feel different. The other thing too is not being invested in an answer. So I think it's always good when you're ready to end and you're going in with that mindset, and you could have that conversation as a courtesy, and you could say, here's what it is, here's why, but you're not really invested in like a goal or an answer outside of what you came there to do. So that friend, if they were to hurry up and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm going to get it right, I'm not going to do it no more, I promise, I love you, let's work this out, or if they say, well, I don't care what you say, go to hell, that kind of stuff. As long as you're not emotionally invested in an answer or a result, you could certainly have that conversation. I would have boundaries around that. I would say, maybe this conversation is 5 minutes or 10 minutes max. I'm gonna say what I need to say. I'm gonna let them say what I need to say, and then after that, we're done. And I feel like I've respected them, I've respected the friendship, and I feel good about how I left things. I don't need validation. I don't need answers. I just wanted to kind of say what I needed to say in order to feel like I handled it in a way that works for me and in a way that I just sort of closed out this loop. So there is that. You might make space for them to ask a question, but I would really set a time limit, because you don't want to give things too much airtime, and you don't want to give people too much space to kind of get negative or nasty or go below the belt, or just to kind of come up with excuses, that sort of thing. Um, so you can do that, but I find that short and simple is better, if you do that. So one liners is what I would do. One liners, 2 minutes. Keep it short and sweet. Don't go into this long diatribe about, you did this on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and blah 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 blah, and it hurt me. I would just keep it short and sweet and simple, and then just straight to the point and out. You can also just, I don't know what number we're on, but you can also just detach, give the relationship space. Again, sometimes when you just give people space, or you get together, maybe occasionally, like if it's in a group of people, if they're part of a group, then that might be the way to go. And you can just kind of, give it space and say that, and do that. But you can very well communicate, that your values don't align. You could just start spending more time with other people where your values do align, and just kind of, you're busy. So I hope that helps. This is a 10-minute video. This doesn't explore all options, but I think some of the more common ones and ones that are most healthy for you and your mental health. So you want to think about what works best for you, what works best for your mental health, and do it that way. So again, you could do a short and sweet conversation for closure. You have a number of ways in which you can effectively communicate that without being invested in an outcome, just more or less so that you're closing the loop, and you're keeping things on a respectful playing field. Because remember, just because you are respectful about things does not mean that they have to do. You can just detach and let things run its course, and not make the effort. If you're not putting in benefits, with a transactional person, they most likely will not reach out. You can also, you may just be done with it and have nothing else to say. That's valid too. So let me know what you think. Like, share, comment, give me a follow if they find this beneficial. And definitely subscribe to my newsletter. First link in my bio. Thanks so much.